Life wasn't always like this for Ifeinwa. Before Mr. Okoye, a kind and loving man, passed away, their home was filled with laughter and genuine care. Ifeinwa, who was orphaned at a young age, found solace in Mr. Okoye's gentle heart. Ifeinwa was an orphan who was adopted by Mr. and Mrs. Okoye at a tender age. Mr. and Mrs. Okoye has other two daughters, Amara and Azuka. Life was so good for Ifeinwa when Mr. Okoye was still alive. She was treated nicely, not ostracized as an orphan. Mr. Okoye will always buy nice things for her and her two sisters, take them to vacations. But since Mr. Okoye's passing, things had changed drastically. Mrs. Okoye, burdened by the sole responsibility of the family, took her frustrations out on Ifeinwa. The chores became endless, and any mistake was met with harsh words and beating. She would always shout at her, saying, "Ifeinwa, didn't I tell you to finish that sweeping, you lazy girl?" And the maltreatment continued. Ifeinwa steps outside for a breath of fresh air. She bumps into Auntie Nkechi, a kind neighbor who has always watched over her. But this time around, Auntie Nkechi looked worried. As she asked Ifeinwa, "My dear child, what is wrong? Why are you crying again?" Ifeinwa replied to her, "My mother is so harsh, Auntie. I can't seem to do anything right." Auntie Nkechi said to her, "Remember, dear, good things always come after bad. You are a strong and kind girl. Don't let anyone dim your light." Auntie Nkechi's words were a beacon of hope for Ifeinwa. She clung to the belief that things would eventually get better. Meanwhile, Amara and Azuka, the spoiled daughters of Okoyes, lie in their privileged lives. They spent their days shopping for expensive clothes, partying late into the night, and leaving a trail of unpaid debt to their wake, while their mother turned a blind eye to their behavior, worried about maintaining their social standard. One Sunday afternoon, a handsome man in a well-tailored suit arrived at the Okoye's doorstep. Mrs. Okoye's eyes lit up with greed. She said, "You must be Mr. Johnson." She quickly called Amara and Azuka to come down and greet Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, as he introduced himself, explained he was looking for a wife. Amara and Azuka flirted around him, hoping to catch his eyes. However, Mr. Johnson's gaze fell upon Ifeinwa, who was diligently washing dishes in the kitchen. Miss Okoye panicked. The kind of wealth Mr. Johnson had was exactly what she craved for her own daughters. Mrs. Okoye quickly said to Mr. Johnson, "That is our maid. My daughters Amara and Azuka are the ones looking to get married." Ifeinwa froze. She held her dishcloth tightly in her hand out of anger. Mr. Johnson's face remained unreadable. He asked Mrs. Okoye, "Maid? That seems strange. She seemed quite elegant and beautiful." Mrs. Okoye replied to him, "Oh, no. She's just been with us for a while. My daughters are much more suitable, won't you agree?" Mrs. Okoye shot desperate glances at Amara and Azuka, who were whispering among themselves. clearly displeased with the turn of events. Ifeyinwa felt so humiliated. Mrs. Okoye had not only lied but belittled her. Mr. Johnson, however, remained calm. He said, Hmm, perhaps, but tell me, young lady, are you happy here? Ifeyinwa hesitated, unsure how to respond. Before she could speak, Mrs. Okoye intervened. Of course she is. We treat her like family, don't we, Ifeyinwa? Glaring at Ifeyinwa forced a smile, her heart heavy. Mr. Johnson's gaze lingered on her for a moment, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. He said, Well, it has been a pleasure meeting you all. However, I believe I will continue my search elsewhere. Amara and Azoka's face were full of disappointment. Their mother's face flushed with anger. She said, Oh, Mr. Johnson, wait. My daughters are the perfect match for you. He replied to her, Perhaps another time. All the best in your search, ladies. He turned and left, leaving Mrs. Okoye's fuming and her daughter sulking in shame and anger. Later that evening, Ifeyinwa confided in Aunty Nkechi about the day's event. She was so sad and was crying. She said to Aunty Nkechi, Auntie, why did my mother have to lie like that? I felt so disrespected. Aunty Nkechi replied to her, Don't let their words get to you, Ifeyinwa. Mrs. Okoye is blinded by greed. Your kindness and hard work will shine through eventually. Ifeyinwa asked her, But what if it doesn't? What if I am stuck here forever? Aunty Nkechi replied to her, Don't lose hope, dear. Remember, there is always a way out of darkness. Aunty Nkechi's word, though comforting, couldn't ease the persistent feeling of uncertainty in Ifeyinwa's heart. And the maltreatment continued. A few days later, as Ifeyinwa was diligently sweeping the front yard, a man in simple clothes approached her. He looked familiar, but she couldn't quite place him. Good morning. You seem to be very hardworking young lady. Ifeyinwa was surprised and replied to him, Good morning, and thank you so much. The man said to her, I couldn't help but notice how beautiful your house is. You must have been taking good care of it. Ifeyinwa blushed and replied to him, We try our best. The man said to her, Speaking of taking care, are you interested in a job where I work as a gateman? They need someone reliable to help with some errands and light housekeeping. Ifeyinwa hesitated. The offer was tempting, especially considering the treatment she received at home. She looked around the house, hoping to catch Mrs. Okoye's eye staring at her. But Mrs. Okoye was nowhere to be seen. With deep breath, Ifeyinwa made a decision. She said, Thank you so much for the offer. Let me talk to my mother and I will get back to you. Excellent. Here is my number. My name is Jide. I'm a gateman at that same house I want you to come and work. Ifeyinwa took the number, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Later that day, Ifeyinwa shared her encounter with Jide with Aunty Nkechi. Aunty Nkechi, what do you think? Should I take the job? Aunty Nkechi said to her, It sounds like a good opportunity, especially considering situation at home. Just be cautious. Ifeyinwa Learn as much as you can about Mr. Jide before making any commitment. He's a gate man trying to help you. Please be careful. Focus on your job when you get there. Ifeyinwa nodded, a newfound spark of determination in her eyes. She packed a small bag with essentials, knowing she couldn't bear another day of Mrs. Okoye's maltreatment. Taking a deep breath, Ifeyinwa left a note for Mrs. Okoye, informing her about the job and her decision to take it. It wasn't a goodbye note, but a step towards a future she hoped held something better. Ifeyinwa followed Jide to his place of work. It wasn't a mansion, but a simple, well-maintained house with a beautiful garden. Ifeyinwa had a feeling of peace as she stepped inside the house. The house was tastefully furnished, very elegant. She met the owner of the house. They discussed the payment plan and she started work immediately. One day, as Ifeyinwa was cleaning, she was doing her cleaning duties. She noticed a collection of expensive books and art pieces. Also, a picture of a successful businessman hanging on the wall, but it was covered. She became suspicious and eager to open it someday. A seed of doubt was planted in Ifeyinwa's mind. Why would a picture be covered and hidden? She asked. She continued to work diligently and also became close to Jide the gateman. They both became friends. Ifeyinwa didn't bother herself about him being a gateman. She looked past a gateman and fell in love with him. Mr. Jide, on the other hand, felt the same for her. They practically shared everything as they became closer by the day. One day, as Ifeyinwa was cleaning that particular room, she was tempted to open that picture, which she eventually did. And behold, it was Jide the gateman. She was shocked and surprised. She couldn't believe her eyes. She was so speechless. While Mr. Jide was enjoying a simple cup of tea, Ifeyinwa confronted him. Jide, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but there is something I don't understand. This house, the belonging, they seem much more expensive than what a regular gateman could afford. Who are you? And why did you deceive me to believe you're a gateman? Jide, knowing that Ifeyinwa had found out the truth, pleaded to explain everything to her. Ifeyinwa, very angry and disappointed, decided to leave the house. But Jide pleaded for just one more time to explain everything. Ifeyinwa decided to give him a chance. I am so sorry to have lied to you, Ifeyinwa. The man you met here when you came is my uncle. Yes, I lied. I'm not a gateman. I am so sorry about that. But I have a good reason for it. All the women that came into my life wanted my money. I had a bad experience of a girl who scammed me of millions and ran away just because I fell in love with her. She scammed me millions and left me bankrupt. So I had to start all over again in life. And I made a decision that any woman I want to marry must not know my true identity. I am so sorry I lied. I hope you understand. I am Jide Ago, CEO of Ago's Enterprise. I was simply trying to find someone genuine, someone who wouldn't judge me for my wealth. Ifeyinwa, still in shock, The man she thought was a simple worker was a powerful businessman. Jidena said to Ifeyinwa, "Your kindness and hard work haven't gone unnoticed. You deserve so much more than the life you have had. Would you consider being my wife?" Ifeyinwa was speechless. The turn of events was beyond anything she could have imagined. The man who had offered her a job was now offering her a life of comfort and security. That night, Ifeyinwa couldn't sleep. The proposal was tempting, but she was confused. What could Mrs. Okoye and her sister say? Would they believe her story? Ifeyinwa knew she had to be honest, even if it meant facing ridicule. The next morning, Mrs. Okoye woke up to find the house unkept and dirty as usual. Her face contoured in rage. That ungrateful girl! How dare she live without permission? Amara, Azuka, we need to find Ifeyinwa. We need someone to do the chores. Amara and Azuka exchanged annoyed glances. The idea of continuing to do their own chores was unthinkable. Amara and Azuka, following their mother's order, Truex Ifeyinwa tracked her down to Jidena's house. They stood outside the gate, fuming with anger. How dare she live without telling us for months? Does she think she can just walk out on her own responsibility? Mother, let us just get her back and teach her a lesson. Their mother replied to them, "That is right. Open this gate, whoever live here." The gate man opened the gate for them. They saw Ifeyinwa, well dressed, standing beside Jidena. Amara, Azuka and their mother's jaw dropped in shock. Ifeyinwa said to them, "Wow, wow, Mama, Amara, Azuka, you all came to visit? How nice." Before Mrs. Okoye could unleash her plenty of insults, Jidena stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. Ifeyinwa isn't here as your maid anymore. She's my fiancée." Amara, Azuka and their mother exchanged a wide glances. They couldn't believe their ears. The realization of their lie and their mistreatment of Ifeyinwa hit them like a thunderclap. Amara and Azuka's mother, startling, "Fiancé? But you a gate man." "I was just testing your character, just as Mr. Johnson did before me. You see, I am Jidena Ago, CEO of Ago Enterprise, and Ifeyinwa, with her genuine heart and work ethic, deserves a life far better than what you offered her." Mrs. Okoye's face flushed with shame. She tried to stammer an apology, but the words wouldn't come out. Amala and Azuka hung their heads in embarrassment. Ifeyinwa said to them, "Apologies won't ease the hurt you caused me, Mama. But I do forgive you. You have your own choices to make, just as I do." Ifeyinwa turned to Amara and Azuka, her voice gentle but firm. She said, "You have the potentials to be better sisters, but change comes from within." Ifeyinwa's words hung in the air, a gentle yet powerful reminder that choices have consequences. Later that day, Ifeyinwa visited Aunty Nkechi, her heart brimming with a mixture of emotion. "Aunty Nkechi, I am getting married." Aunty Nkechi was so happy. "Oh, Ifeyinwa, I knew it. I am so happy for you, my dear. It is all thanks to you, Auntie. Your guidance and support kept me going through difficult times." They share a warm hug. The joy of Ifeyinwa's newfound happiness, tinged with a hint of sadness at leaving her beloved friend behind. A few months later, Ifeyinwa and Jide got married in a beautiful ceremony filled with joy and love. Amara and Azuka, humbled by their experience, attended as guests, wishing their sister well. Ifeyinwa's life finally reflected her kind and hardworking nature. She found love, respect, and a future she could truly cherish, proving that good deeds do get rewarded, even when the path seemed long and challenging. A year later, after Ifeyinwa's wedding, a change began to stir within Amara and Azuka. The lavish lifestyle they lived began to stop, while their mother's health declined due to the stress of managing the household alone. They realized the error of their ways. One sunny afternoon, they went to Aunty Nkechi's doorstep to seek for help. Azuka said to her, "Aunty Nkechi, we need your help. We want to change. We want to find jobs and become independent." Aunty Nkechi smiled at them. She said, "It is never too late to make changes, girls. I am proud of you for taking this first step." Aunty Nkechi, ever the guiding light, helped them find a waitress position at a local restaurant. The work was tough, but they persevered, learning the value of hard work and earning their own money. Ifeyinwa and Jide lived a happy and fulfilling life together. They built a life based on respect, empathy, and shared value. Ifeyinwa never forgot the lessons she learned during her difficult times, her strong character shining through as she faced each new challenge with grace and determination. The story of Ifeyinwa serves as a reminder that even in the face of adversities, kindness and hard work can pave way for a brighter future. It is a tale of resilience, self-belief, and the unexpected reward that comes with a good heart. Want more stories that will leave you glued to your seats? Like this video, share it with your loved ones who love epic tales, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming content. Don't forget to leave a comment below and tell us how you feel about this story.